I just want to give you a little heads up about who I am. I am a licensed clinical social worker and registered play therapist, and I work at the Nashville Children's Alliance, which is the Davidson County Child Advocacy Center. And I work closely with children who have had big things happen to them, whether that's trauma, whether that's abuse, whether it's both neglect, adoptive families, families who have had attachment disruptions. And so Jillian had asked if I would present today, kind of talking about a little bit of how trauma and attachment affects our development, and then it can affect how we're able to be in relationship with our children and the people in our lives. So I am going to try to screen share. I think Jillian might have turned off screen share, and I don't know if she's still on here. So
let me see here.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, I think you should be good.
Yes.
Okay.
So I wanted to be able just to share. We all learn in different ways. I think you guys are aware of that. And since we all learn in different ways, some of us learn better through seeing, some of us learn better through hearing, some of us learn better by doing. And so because of that, I wanted to have several different ways for us to be able to learn today. PowerPoint isn't always the best, but it kind of helps a little bit though when we are visual learners. So just to talk a little bit about what this training is about, it's to talk a little bit about some of the bizarre, overwhelming, defiant, aggressive, attention-seeking behaviors that we see from children in our lives, that we see from the children that we love and we care for and that we spend time with. I'm sure that we hear those labels attached to children at various different times. Maybe sometimes in our own head, maybe even out of our own mouths, we feel the same way about the kids. But if we begin to be more curious about why those things happen and why those behaviors are happening and occurring, it's not an excuse for the behavior, but sometimes it helps us have more empathy. And for us as caregivers to begin to be able to kind of recalibrate and reframe our mind so that we can deal with some of these big and overwhelming behaviors a little better. So I first want to you guys can use the chat feature if it's turned on, or if you want to unmute yourself and talk. But I kind of wanted to hear from you guys what you think of when you hear the term child traumatic stress. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Child traumatic stress can be lots of different things. It can be lots of different things that ourselves and our children deal with, experience. It can be something as gruesome as child sexual abuse. It can be something as hard to think about and hear about as child physical abuse. But it also can be growing up in a home where a parent is overwhelmed or has a lot going on. Some people have said grief. Some people have said upheaval. Some people have said experiences, an event or events that are difficult to process. All of those are definitely pieces of child traumatic stress. One of the other pieces is trauma is anything that exceeds our ability to cope. So what might be traumatic for me might not be traumatic for you. What is traumatic for you might be something that's just not so great, might be crunchy, but it might not be traumatic for everyone in the same way. So what is trauma? Trauma can be considered an overwhelming, uncontrollable experience that psychologically impacts victims by creating in them feelings of helplessness, vulnerability, loss of safety, and loss of control. It can also be, as Bessel van der Kolk is a researcher who's done a lot of research on trauma and attachment and issues. And what he says is safety and terror are incompatible. When we are terrified, nothing calms us down like the reassuring voice or the firm embrace of someone we trust. Frightened adults respond to the same comforts as terrified children. Gentle holding and rocking, and the assurance that somebody bigger and stronger is taking care of things. So you can safely go to sleep. In order to recover, mind, body, and brain need to be convinced it's safe to let go. This happens only when you feel safe at a visceral level and allow yourself to connect that sense of safety with memories of past helplessness. One of the things that we can talk about is that trauma changes children's worldviews. It changes their view of the world, and it changes their view of whether or not the world is a safe place and a place that's going to respond to their particular needs or their particular concerns. So when we think about that, our attachment bonds are our biggest and our best way of protecting ourselves against threat. If we think of children who have come from experiences that might not have been optimal, or if they've even had to move into a home that might not have been their home of origin, we begin to see children who have had big experiences, different experiences, and a place where maybe their attachment has been disrupted, either intentionally or maybe even unintentionally. One of the things that Bessel van der Kolk talks about is there were studies done during World War II. And in World War II, in England, they had the Blitz. And that was when there was a lot of bombing of London at the time. And there were a lot of parents who had family members or individuals that were safe and secure for their kids, that they sent their kids out to the country. There were also parents who had children who they didn't have anywhere to send. So they had to keep them with themselves in the bomb shelters. They witnessed the bombings, they witnessed destroyed buildings and all types of terrors. And what they found through that research is that the children who stayed with their caregiver, with their primary attachment figure, actually had less trauma, they had less issues and less problems than the ones who were sent away to safety. What that tells us is that our body is created and needs this connection with a safe, stable, nurturing individual, with our safe, stable, nurturing relationship. So we're going to talk a little bit about how our wiring of our brain and how our brain is created and connected can begin to change and be disrupted in the type of experiences or the types of environments that we grow up in or we live in. I did want to read this small kind of blog post from a foster family that I saw recently. And it just kind of hit me. It really resonated with me. They said, I was able to walk through the grocery store this morning. I found myself passing the toilet paper aisle, which is completely stocked now. I currently have enough toilet paper for my family, yet I still stopped and almost turned my cart around that aisle to buy more. Why? Because just last week and the several weeks before, those shelves were stripped bare. Even though I do not need toilet paper, something inside of me still felt an irrational need to go grab a package off the shelf just in case. Have you ever felt that urge with something in particular during our country's shutdowns? Now, what if you had been deprived of your basic needs? What if food was withheld from you? Can you imagine how your body might react to seeing food? How you might want to take what you can, eat as much, and store away as much as possible. Most of us have only experienced a small piece of what many of our foster children, our adoptive children, our children who have experienced complex trauma have lived. During these last few weeks, most of us We're still not deprived of basic human necessities, only luxuries. Yet none of us will ever look at the toilet paper aisle the same way the rest of our lives. So the next time you encounter a child who acts out or does something irrational or unexplainable to you, try to remember the toilet paper shortage of 2020. Understand they are acting from a survival part of their brain that they cannot explain. I thought it was a really great way for us to begin to maybe put ourselves in the shoes of the children that we care about. It's sometimes hard to understand why they have bizarre and overwhelming behavior, why some of their behavior can seem uncomfortable, why some of their behavior can feel or seem violent or inappropriate. Sometimes we also hear our children get labeled with lots of diagnoses. You guys have probably heard attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. Maybe you've heard oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, bipolar disorder, all those different things. But really the important piece to remember is that these diagnoses don't capture the full extent of who people are, who human beings are. At this point, what we do know is that, a lot of these symptoms, a lot of these reactions to the big things that kids have experienced can be explained in our medical world with diagnoses. But really, what we need to remember is kids aren't just a set of symptoms. They are children. They're the people that we love and the people that we are in connection with. I think sometimes we all try to figure out, is it survival? Is it manipulation? Is it the way their brain was developed and the foundation of their brain? What exactly is it that we're seeing each individual time that we have issues, behaviors, and concerns with children? So first, I just kind of want to talk about our brain and our brain architecture. So I assume a lot of you have probably heard about the foundation of your house. And if the foundation of your house isn't strong, then you're going to have a hard time selling your house. You shouldn't buy a house that has a poor foundation. Or as you see in this picture, if it really is let to go pretty awry, the house is going to fall down. If we look at how houses are built, when the foundation of the house is built, if the contractor or the builder takes a really good long time focusing on making sure all the pieces are in the right place, making sure that we've added the extra dirt, the extra cinder blocks, the extra cement, everything that we need to make the house good and strong to build on top of. We've also heard about houses where that hasn't happened. I remember when I was selling a house several years ago, they came in to look at the house and do the inspection. And what they realized was when the house was built, they had dirt. They put cinder blocks on top of the dirt. And then they built some concrete pillars on top of the dirt. And then they built the house on top of it. And as you guys all know, in Tennessee, it rains a lot. And so when it rains, then the dirt shifts. Those cinder blocks shifted, and so the foundation of the house shifted. It takes a lot of money then at that point, once the house is built, to fix the foundation. If they had spent the time needed in the beginning to make sure that everything was put together appropriately, it could have been done for a lot cheaper and a lot quicker. What we begin to notice with children is that if the foundation of their brain has had maybe an oopsie, or there has been, for some reason, something hard that's happened, or bad, sad, and scary that's happened, or they have not had their needs met from an attentive caregiver, we can see that the foundation of their brain has been developed in a different way, and therefore then can explain some of the bizarre and overwhelming behavior that our children have. So if we think of the attachment cycle, what the attachment cycle is typically good enough attachment builds trust with the caregiver, builds trust within the individual and the person themselves, and gives the person the belief that they have a voice and that their environment is safe and will meet their needs. So when we see babies that come out of the womb, babies that are born, they have a need. They express their need typically by crying. They typically have a caregiver that meets their need. You know, sometimes when it's a first-time parent, it's figuring out, well, they're crying. Do I need to bounce them? Okay, nope, that didn't work. Do I need to feed them? No, that didn't work. Oh, I need to change their diaper. And so it's not that the caregiver immediately meets the need perfectly every time. Good enough parents only get it right 33% of the time. The other 60-some% of the time, we are repairing for the ruptures that we've had. But typically, more often than not, the child expresses a need, the caregiver meets the need, the child is soothed and contented, and then trust begins to develop. So if we think about that and we think about how kids' brains get wired, we think about some of the children in our lives that might have not had this attachment cycle. And then we think about one of the other ways that good, healthy attachment and brain foundation is created for children is through what building strong brains and frameworks called serve and return interactions. Those are the interactions where the child gives out a bid for connection and the parent returns that. You can think about that as serve and return. The idea came from tennis. I'm not sure a lot of people all know how tennis works, so I think of it more of as a game of catch. You know, if you throw the football at your child's probably going to catch the football and throw it back to you. Or if you play fetch with your dog, you're going to throw the ball, the dog's going to run and get it, going to bring it back. And so there is this back and forth of connection that is happening. And the way that the foundations of our brain is built is by this back and forth connections with our primary caregiver or our primary attachment figure. If you look at the picture on this slide, it shows an actual real life brain scan of, I think this is a mother and a baby. And it shows that the pieces of their brains that are lit up through this interaction is places in the brain where the mom's brain's lit up, but then even the baby's brain's lit up. And it doesn't have to be a mom. It can be any primary caregiver or primary attachment figure that they've seen that the connection between the two happens even at a biological level. One of the other things that science has told us is that there's lots of different kinds of stress. We have positive stress. Positive stress is like what happened this afternoon when I thought I was supposed to be here at 2, my time, but it was really 2, your time. There was this immediate reaction of, oh my heavens, I messed up. I needed to be there. But then I get on, I start talking, the stress comes down, I've calmed myself, and I've realized that, you know, in the future, I need to just send an email and say, are you in Central Time Zone? Tolerable stress is something big that's happened that we weren't planning on. It's unavoidable. It could be a tornado. It could be a flood. It could be a death of a loved one. It could be some sort of tragedy that happens. But when there is a safe, stable, nurturing caregiver who can come alongside us, or a safe, stable, nurturing partner or individual who can come alongside and support us, we have a spike in stress, and it might stay for just a time, and then it'll come back down. Then we have the type of stress that's called toxic stress. And that's what we see with children who have had neglect. They've had abuse. They've had, for some reason, a very long separation from a caregiver. Those kinds of things. And then, and yes, I know that Jillian responded, but she does have a copy of the PowerPoint. So you guys will have a copy of that. So the toxic stress are the things where our stress spikes we will continue to see that stress stay. And either the thing that created the stress is continual and it never stops, or we don't have a safe, stable, nurturing relationship or environment to help co-regulate us and bring us back down, bring us back to a calm, collected place. So I want to see if I can do this. Hopefully I can. I have a really short video I would love to play for you guys. I think I can screen share with volume. Hold on a second. I think I need to stop share and restart. I apologize for that. There it is. All right. Now, let's see if I can get this to work again. I'm sorry. All right, let's see if we can get this to work. It's just a really short video, but I think it really sums up this information really well.
Science tells us that the experiences we have in the first years of our lives actually affect the physical architecture of the developing brain. This means that brains aren't just born, they're also built over time based on our experiences. Just as a house needs a sturdy foundation to support the walls and roof, a brain needs a good base to support all future development. Positive interactions between young children and their caregivers literally build the architecture of the developing brain. Building a sturdy foundation in the earliest years provides a good base for a lifetime of good mental function and better overall health. So just how is a solid brain foundation built and maintained in a developing child? One way is through what brain experts call serve and return interactions. Imagine a tennis match between a caregiver and a child, but instead of hitting a ball back and forth across the net, various forms of communication pass between the two, from eye contact to touch, from singing to simple games like peekaboo. These interactions, repeated throughout a young person's developing years, are the bricks that build a healthy foundation for all future development. But another kind of childhood experience shapes brain development too, and that's stress. Good kinds of stress, like meeting new people or studying for a test, are healthy for development because they prepare kids to cope with future challenges. Another kind of stress, called toxic stress, is bad for brain development. If a child is exposed to serious, ongoing hardships like abuse and neglect, and he has no other caregiver in his life to provide support, the basic structures of his developing brain may be damaged. Without a sturdy foundation to properly support future development, he's at risk for a lifetime of health problems, development issues, even addiction. It's possible to fix some of the damage of toxic stress later on, but it's easier, more effective, and less expensive to build solid brain architecture in the first place. One of the things that sturdy brain architecture supports is the development of basic emotional and social skills, an important group of skills which scientists call executive function and self-regulation, can be thought of like air traffic control in the child's mental airspace. Think of a young child's brain as the control tower at a busy airport. All those planes landing and taking off and all of the support systems on the ground simultaneously demand the controller's attention to avoid a crash. It's the same with a young child learning to pay attention, plan ahead and remember, and follow lots of rules. Like all of us, kids have to react to things happening in the world around them, while also dealing with worries, temptations, and obligations on their minds. As these demands for attention pile up, air traffic control helps the child regulate the flow of information, prioritize tasks, and above all, find ways to manage stress and avoid mental collisions along the way. Having this ability is a necessity for positive and level mental health. Developing effective air traffic control, overcoming toxic stress, and building solid brain architecture are things kids can't do on their own. And since strong societies are made up of healthy, contributing individuals, It's up to us as a community to make sure all young people have the kinds of nurturing experiences they need for positive development. To build better futures, we need to build better brains.
If anyone is interested or would like to see the video again or be able to show it to somebody else in your life, if you just go to Google and type in Alberta Family Wellness Initiative, or even go to albertafamilywellness.org, you can pull up the video. It's called Building Strong Brains, and it is free. Or I think it's called How Brains Are Built. I apologize. And it's free to be able to download and be able to show to others. I think it's a really great way and simplistic way just to be able to talk about how the different experiences that we've had in our lives can shape our brain. There is also a just a little chart. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but it shows that with childhood trauma, there are impacts in all areas of your life. There is impact on cognition, which is the way you think, the way your brain works. As the video talks about, your air traffic control system, your ability to stop, think, and choose. It affects your brain development and how the foundation of your brain is developed. It can affect your physical health because we can see that we have a harder time sleeping, that people have issues with eating, or their immune system might be compromised because they're constantly in a state of survival. We can see changes in emotions and behaviors, which is that overwhelming and bizarre behavior and emotion and issues that we see. We can see issues with mental health and then relational issues, because all of those things combined together can create issues in relationship and within and between individuals. So I apologize, my cats are, okay, there you go. Okay, so if we talk about the healthy attachment style, and now we're gonna look at the disrupted attachment cycle. What we see is kids who express a need, their caregiver doesn't meet the need. And it's not that piece of trying to figure out between different things, what is the need that is being asked to be met. It's just the caregiver doesn't meet the need for lots of different reasons. Maybe the caregiver has their own attachment history. Maybe they have their own trauma. Maybe they're working 3 jobs. They're so exhausted that when they come home, they just need some quiet. There can be lots of reasons. But then what we see is a miscue without repair. So we see this need that's expressed. We see a parent or a caregiver and a child who have kind of missed each other in what they need and what they can give. And then there's not a repair. There's not a circle back, a coming back around to say, oh my heavens, I was so tired and stressed out from all the things that have happened today. I completely missed that you just needed me to come in and delight in you today. So then if there's not that repair, then mistrust begins to develop. We also see that kids that grow up with a disruptive attachment cycle, their brain and their brain power is put towards growing the part of their brain that makes sure that they survive. The part of their brain that watches out for danger and makes sure that they are safe when there is danger. So because their brain is putting so much energy to building that, what they call the limbic system, that part of our brain that keeps our brain and our body safe, it is not putting a lot of time and energy into building the thinking part of our brain, which is our prefrontal cortex. And so we begin to see kids who grow and mature with a very overactive limbic system, and a system where they're continually reactive instead of responsive, that they have a really hard time stopping and thinking and then making a choice. If we look at brain scans they did a research about kids who grew up in some Romanian orphanages years ago. It was a long time ago, before they knew a lot that they know now. And there were some Romanian orphanages where kids were left primarily in their cribs majority of the time. There wasn't a lot of interaction. They kind of propped the bottles up, and there just wasn't a lot of that attachment or that good, healthy attachment cycle being met. When they did the brain scans, what they noticed is that these two pieces of their brain were not lit up. That's the temporal lobe. That is the part of your brain that begins to help you stop, think, and choose. If you look at the brain scan that I showed in the very beginning, and you look at the child in the brain scan, the parts of the brain that is lit up in that child's brain are those two pieces that are missing from the neglect and from the lack of attunement and connection between caregiver and child. So what does all that mean? That means that those pieces of your brain are also the pieces that help your air traffic control system work. It's the part that helps us focus on lots of different things at once. It's the part of my brain that's allowing me to continue to talk to you while my cats lose their mind and chase each other around my house. That it's the part of my brain that helps me focus on you, no matter if I hear a noise outside the front door. We also know that our brain has something called neuroception. That's the part of our brain that searches the world and our environment 4 times every second, looking for safety and security inside myself, outside myself, and in between in relationship. As our brain and the foundation of our brain begins to grow and develop, our brain begins to believe we either live in a neuroception of safety or a neuroception of danger. So there is a part where our brain begins to organize around this belief that either the world is safe or the world is unsafe. Well, the part of my brain that goes into survival thinks much faster than the part of my brain that, as those 4 times every second it's happening, can actually catch the sensory input or the information that's coming in. So if we look at a graph, if we look at something that would be maybe a perceived threat for a neurotypical developing brain. So this morning, the garbage truck came by. It's a really loud noise. And so let's say I hear the garbage truck out my front door. My brain immediately is going to go to 2 different places. It's going to begin to send that information to what is called my amygdala. And it's going to send the information to my medial prefrontal cortex or region. And so what it's looking at this point is this noise safe or unsafe? And can I then stop, think, and choose? Well, the perceived threat gets to my amygdala way faster than it gets to anything else. And it begins to decide, is this a safe environment? Is this not a safe environment? If my amygdala says, you know what, this is safe, then it kind of holds for a minute, lets the sensory information get to my middle prefrontal region, and lets my middle prefrontal region stop, think, and choose. Then it goes to my hippocampus, puts all that together, says, have I heard this before? Then my hypothalamus says, it's okay, I'm going to release some neurotransmitters so you can calm your body, you are safe. But what does our brain look like when we have grown up with a foundation of our brain that has a neuroception of danger? For those individuals, what we see is they hear the perceived threat. So let's say the perceived threat again, or the noise, is the garbage truck. But maybe for me, every time the garbage truck came by every week, my parent would get really angry because they forgot to put the trash out, or I forgot to put the trash out. And so then because of that, then my caregiver would get really big, and then there would be some very harsh discipline that was scary and traumatic to me. So at that point, the perceived threat, when it gets to my amygdala is going to say, this noise isn't safe. It is very unsafe. And so at that point, the amygdala doesn't hold space and wait. It doesn't let my middle prefrontal region catch up. It just immediately goes to the alarm. And it's like, danger, danger. It sends signals to the rest of my brain that says, you need to go offline. You need to calm it down. I'm going to activate the autonomic nervous system, or that limbic system, or that survival strategy. And I then, as your brain, am going to decide what is the safest way to react. Do I go into fight mode? Do I go into flight, which means I run away? Or do I freeze? And freeze typically is your brain collapsing, freezing, or playing dead. So being able to see those things. One of the other things that we know about children is something called our windows of tolerance. So kids who have a typically developing brain with their windows of tolerance are going to have slowly go up and down in the middle of their window, and they can go into fight flight, they can go down into freeze, but majority of the time they stay within their windows of tolerance, which is the amount of stress that they can handle without losing their mind. Our kids who have experienced a disruptive attachment system, they don't have that nice ebb and flow of their brain. Their brain, it doesn't take very much for them to go into their survival strategy, or as we talked earlier, they have an overactive limbic system. Some of the part that we can play in relationships is that we need to provide for children presence, attunement, resonance, and trust. What that means is that children who might have a neuroception of danger, might have an overactive limbic system, need us to help come alongside them and regulate them when they're outside of their windows of tolerance, when their amygdala alarm has gone off. So it could be that you try slow and rhythmic seesaw if you see a child in fight flight, or maybe suggesting they do some rocking or rocking in a chair. They can lean on a gym ball. They can do some push-ups, wall push-ups. There's a list here that will be in your PowerPoint handout that you get. But realizing that most of the time when children are outside of their windows of tolerance in fight and flight, we really need something gross motor, something that is using our body so that we can begin to calm our system. If we have a child who is in freeze and collapse, it's beginning to see, okay, how can I bring the energy up? How can I bring the energy up in a safe way? So it might be letting them do some climbing, letting them get up and run, letting them eat crunchy foods, or they might need to go out in the bright sunshine for a little bit. But realizing that when we begin to see bizarre and overwhelming behaviors, we want to begin to allow our children a chance to move. Then we need to see, did it help them return back to a balanced place? And if it didn't, maybe we need to think of one of the other strategies for regulation. The other thing that I think is very important for us as individuals to look at is, am I siphoning? So being able to look at for these children as their caregivers, as their teachers, as their parents, is this piece of their mirror neurons, what they're feeling is going to affect us. When we begin to then feel that in our bodies, do we begin to misinterpret our own response system as something going on inside of us? How can we, as caregivers, people who work with these children or care for these children, how can we remain present, be attuned? So watch what's going on, knowing if they're within their windows of tolerance, not mirroring back the emotion or the feeling that we're seeing, and then being able to resonate, which that means being able to be in communication with them and empathy. Notice that they're having something big going on inside of them, while not at the same time feeling exactly what they're feeling at the same time. So one of the things is being able to think about, when you're on your own, being able to draw a circle, look at these 6 different emotions, and think about when you were a child, what emotions did you feel like your primary caregiver was able to be with you in and help you organize the feelings? Being able to put the ones inside the circle that you feel like your family could really be with you in. Putting the ones outside the circle of the ones where you knew you just weren't supposed to have those emotions. Anger was not allowed at your house, maybe. And then some inside and outside of the circle, kind of on the line of the ones that sometimes you could have and sometimes you couldn't. What that does is, as individuals, it begins to give us a map or a picture of the emotions and the feelings that might begin to trigger us. So then we begin to siphon those off of our child. It's not really something we need to do right now, because it just takes a moment of sitting, being with yourself, thinking about it, and then really recognizing what comes up for you when you're thinking about it. The last thing is being able to have reflective functioning. So looking at what is going on inside of me that might be reflecting onto my interpretation or my ability to be there with soft eyes, quiet voice, calm and structured environment to be there for you. One of the ways to do that is to, as Dan Siegel calls, SIFT. SIFT is an acronym for thinking about what are the sensations I'm having in my body. What are the images that are coming to my head? What feelings are coming up? What am I thinking? Oh, and then thoughts. What am I thinking? Being able to sit for a moment with ourselves and really begin to realize what are the emotions that maybe were not desirable or tolerated in our home of origin. What comes up for us when those emotions are expressed by a child or an individual in our world or in our environment? And then, is the emotion, the feelings, the sensations, the thoughts that are coming up, is that me siphoning off of my child or the individual in front of me? Is that me having a reaction to the things that are occurring? Or is it that the child is having big emotions and behaviors, and I need to figure out how to calm myself, my body, my brain, and my mind to be able to be that co-regulator? What we see with kids with a disruptive attachment system is this experience that their foundation of their brain has been organized and created in a different way. If we as adults who care for them, love them, and come alongside them can begin to regulate ourselves, keep ourselves within our windows of tolerance, and then join with them to recreate a healthy attachment cycle, we can begin to see the foundations of their brain change and move and become more healthier. That was just a quick overview of some of the things that we can talk about and learn when we think about the experiences and the places that our kids have come from. I know it was really quick. If there's any thoughts, questions, anything, please feel free to contact me. This will also be in the PowerPoint that Jillian will send out later. That will have information where you can contact me if you would like to have ask more questions or have more information given. I hope this has been helpful and not too heavy for 1 o'clock in the afternoon right after lunch.
Thank you, Lori, for doing this. Everybody should have the PowerPoint in their email pretty soon after this meeting is over. So thanks for being here.